Urban District by the end of the school year. We'll discuss this decision and more of today's top headlines. I'm Frank Billingsley.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. We'll also talk with Tony Payan, a fellow in the U.S. Mexico Studies at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy, who will share his thoughts on the current situation in Mexico and beyond.
And I'm Ernie Manous. Plus, we'll talk with actress Pantea Ommi about her role in the Pulitzer Prize-winning play English, currently running at the Alley Theater.
And as always, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Former President Bill Clinton is testifying behind closed doors today before members of the U.S. House investigating cases related to the late-convicted sex predator Jeffrey Epstein. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton testified yesterday. And like his wife, the former president released a copy of his opening remarks in which he says he had no idea of Epstein's crimes. Clinton says no matter how many photos he is shown in and how that they may be interpreted, the former president says he saw nothing and did nothing wrong. Vice President J.D. Vance is set to meet today with the Omani foreign minister about Iran. NPR's Frank Ordonez reports on the latest turn of Iranian negotiations to avert a military strike.
The meeting with Vice President Vance and Iran's Badr al-Busaidi, who has served as mediator in the talks, follows a third round of indirect discussions between U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner with Iran. Some see the meetings as one of the last chances for the sides to reach a deal before the U.S. launches strikes on Iran. The U.S. has already amassed a large military presence in the Middle East as negotiations continue. Ahead of the meeting, the vice president told the Washington Post, quote, "The idea that we're going to be in a Middle Eastern war for years with no end in sight, there's no chance that'll happen." Franco Ordonez, NPR News, the White House.
Pakistan and Afghanistan are in an open war, according to Pakistani Defense Minister Khawaja Mohammad Asif today. The neighbors have a long and complicated history, but the latest confrontation is described as the most serious in months. Afghanistan conducted extensive cross-border attacks last night. It says it was retaliating for Pakistan's airstrike Sunday. The AI company Anthropic says it won't agree to demands from the Defense Department to loosen its safety standards to help the U.S. military. NPR's John Ruich reports the Pentagon wants to use Anthropic's AI models without limits.
The DoD wants to be able to use Anthropic's AI for, quote, any lawful use, but the company has drawn a line, saying it does not want its AI models used for domestic mass surveillance or in fully autonomous weapons. This week, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth threatened to blacklist Anthropic over those limits. Now, Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei says in a statement his company cannot, in good conscience, accede to the DoD demands. He says in some cases, AI can undermine rather than defend democratic values, and threats from the DoD do not change Anthropic's position. DoD spokesperson Sean Parnell said on social media the Pentagon has no interest in using AI to conduct mass surveillance of Americans or to use AI to develop fully autonomous weapons. John Ruich, NPR News.
U.S. stocks trading lower this hour with the Dow down 573 points or more than 1%. It's NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. Today is the last day of early voting for the primary elections across Texas. During the first week of early voting, more than 1 million Texans cast ballots. Election Day is coming up on Tuesday. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and there will be additional polling locations open on Tuesday compared to early voting. Houston ISD's state-appointed Board of Managers voted unanimously to officially close or to co-locate 12 schools in the district. Dozens came out to express their anger and frustration over the closures. News 88.7's Bianca Seward was there when tensions boiled over and the crowd erupted into anger.
The board's decision sparked anger and tears throughout the auditorium. State-appointed Superintendent Mike Miles announced the plan for closures just 2 weeks ago, surprising many after he committed to not close any schools in December. It was an emotional night. Daisy Mariano broke down after the decision. Her daughter is a student at Port Houston Elementary. It's among the campuses set to close permanently at the end of this school year.
Supposedly he was sticking to his word about not closing schools, and all of a sudden, here we are, heartbroken with the closure of our school.
For more on this story and for a full list of the affected schools, visit houstonpublicmedia.org. I'm Bianca Seward, News 88.7.
A third lawsuit against the Harris County Jail has been filed in federal court this year. It was filed by family members of Alexis Cardenas, who died during an altercation with detention officers who were escorting him out of the jail in July last year. Though he was arrested over a decade-old traffic citation, the new 70-page legal complaint alleges that his charges were dropped by a judge 17 hours before he died while being released from jail. The lawsuit also says that the reason why he pushed his way back into the jail during his release was to tell officers that his cell phone battery died and he had no safe means of returning home. The Harris County Sheriff's Office has declined to comment on the new lawsuit. It is 77 degrees on the University of Houston campus. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Yeehaw!
Howdy, Houston!
It is Go Texan Day, and if you are watching on YouTube, I don't know, are you in for a treat to see us all done up in our cowboy, or are you in for a surprise? Celeste, how would you term it?
Hey, I think we're
festive. We're
looking to
excited.
roll.
We are proud Texans, and today we get to celebrate our the great state of Texas, and we showed up.
We did.
Go big or go home.
Go
That's
big
what
or
I
go
say.
home.
Absolutely.
What does this mean? It is the start of rodeo season right here. The cook-off is underway right now. The rodeo starts next week. We're going to be broadcasting live from over there twice during the run of the rodeo.
We are, March 5th and March 11th.
We are, and if you're watching us on YouTube right now, I think they can pop up we have a camera over there right now.
We
looking
do,
around
and
a little bit,
of course the sky is gorgeous today, and it's going to be pretty much right on into the weekend.
Okay, people are going out for the cook-off. How are they tonight and tomorrow?
It'll be comfortable. Okay. And I think you'll see everything from a shirt like this, which is a little heavier, to T-shirts. I mean, it's going to be right there in the upper 60s, low 70s. Humidity is low. It should be a beautiful night for barbecue. And you know what? It not always is. They always take a chance with it being too cold, too windy, too stormy. There's just a lot of twos, right?
Yeah.
But this weekend, it couldn't be better.
Oh, great. Yeah. I go out every year. I'm fortunate enough to get to judge at the cook-off.
Yeah.
And so I always go out on Saturday, but I go in the afternoon. It's very quiet there, because you see the party footage. So if you go and it kind of scares you off, go earlier in the day. It's much quieter. I mean, they're still getting going, so it's not everything isn't at full force. And then by like 6 or 7 o'clock, when I'm leaving, the crowd's coming across the bridges, and I'm like, "Get me home!
Get me home!"
Right.
Well, the trail riders, watch your do your ways as you get around. Have you ever been stuck because of a trail ride?
Yes,
I have. Oh, right at Richmond and 610, and there's nowhere to go. They're coming right down the feeder road.
I never have been stuck behind a trail rider, but I will say I love the trail riders.
Yes.
When they come in, I don't know why, it even makes me feel a little emotional seeing them coming in and the families. Last year, it just so happened I was running at Memorial Park, and
where
they all
camp there.
camp out.
Yeah.
And I was there very early in the morning, and you saw moms giving their kids breakfast, and you saw the dads, and the
out of
cowboys.
cast iron skillets, and I cooking them
I'm
over
not
a fire.
kidding. It really is
crazy.
something out of you're just like, wow.
Well, I remember when I would cover it, it was the Los Vaqueros trail ride out of Brownsville.
Yeah, Los
and
Vaqueros.
Those guys would take their 2 weeks vacation that they had for the whole year and do the trail ride. It meant that much to them. So I think the sentimentality and the devotion to the trail ride is probably where you feel that upwelling of connection.
And I grew up in South Texas, where right now they have what they call Charro Days, and it's charro, and it is the celebration of being on the border between Mexico and Brownsville, Texas, Matamoros and Brownsville, Texas. And so I grew up where there was a time of the year in the spring where you dressed up and you felt proud about, being kind of a Texan and being from where you're at. So I just think this time of year is really special.
We were talking about it a little earlier when I first moved here, the kind of culture shock of seeing people, the way we're dressed today, actually dress this way in their daily life. And I thought, what's going on? It's got to be a put. And then I realized, no, this is a way of life down here. And now after 30 years, it's our way of life too. It just becomes us. So we're excited about that. We'll be covering more of the rodeo as it continues on. We'll keep an eye on the weather. But thank you, Frank, for giving me a good weekend.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be a great weekend. Nice temperatures, highs of 80, lows of 60. So evenings will be right around 70.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, all of that said and done, let's move into the headlines because the world continues on.
Yes, the state-appointed board overseeing Houston Independent School District voted unanimously Thursday to close 12 campuses at the end of the school year. The decision followed hours of emotional public testimony with nearly 80 parents, students, elected officials, and community members urging the board to postpone the vote. All speakers opposed the closures. Superintendent Mike Miles has argued that falling enrollment and aging buildings make the cuts unavoidable. Houston City Council member Edward Pollard asked Mayor John Whitmire to invite Superintendent Miles to answer questions before council. Though the city has no authority over the district, HISD has not commented. We want to hear from you. If you're a parent, student, teacher, or neighbor in one of the affected communities, how will these school closures impact you? Do you believe declining enrollment justifies the decision? Or should the district have taken a different approach? What questions do you still have for district leadership? Call us and share your perspective. Your voice is part of this conversation. And joining us now to help us understand more about this is Houston Public Media reporter Bianca Seward. Bianca, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
So
interesting because there's no plan to replace these 12. They're just going to shut them down. It's not like, we're going to build a newer, more up-to-date school in place of the ones that we're closing. So what are they going to do? Do you know?
Yeah, it's 12 schools, 11 facilities that are going to be directly affected by this, and they're closing permanently 7 of them, and the others are being co-located, so kind of merging some schools together in one facility. And as far as plans go, that's what they voted on last night, was to permanently shut these schools down, move the families into other areas. Mike Miles made a bit of a short speech last night as to why they were making some of these decisions, and then kicked it to his deputy superintendent, Kristen Hull, and another leader to kind of explain the whole process to the public.
Bianca, you were there last night, and there is a lot of video that is going viral of a parent who was dragged out. Talk to me about what it felt like to be in that meeting during that time.
Yeah, it was definitely an emotional meeting last night. The anger in the room was palpable. There were dozens, nearly 80 speakers of parents, students, teachers who came out to express anger, frustration. They're calling it a lack of community input. They only found out about these closures 2 weeks ago. And that was a surprise in and of itself because Miles had committed to publicly committed to not closing schools in December. So a bit of a reversal there, a bit of a shock for a lot of the community members. And it's only been 2 weeks for them to absorb the information, grapple with the changes. What does this mean for their students, for their new lives? What will the fall look like? So it was emotional. There was a number of times where the crowd really got quite angry, shouting at the board. They did end up recessing for a few minutes to kind of resume calm to the auditorium.
I'm sorry if I missed this, but when would this take effect?
The schools will be closed by June 4th at the end of this academic calendar. So any of the students being transferred will see new elementary schools or middle schools in the fall.
And what to do with the land?
We haven't heard much yet about that. There's been some speculation about could they sell the properties? Will they hold on to them? What will happen? There are no immediately plans right now for those facilities, the ones that have closed permanently. But people are asking questions.
So, Superintendent Mike Miles has talked about infrastructure, lowering low enrollment. What are there other options besides just closing a school when you're meeting these type of issues?
It's a difficult position for the district to be in because we are facing huge budget shortages and enrollment declines directly affect the funding that we can get from the state. So these are real challenges for the district to grapple with. Closing schools is one way to help kind of mitigate those losses because renovating or rebuilding a school can be extremely costly. Mm-hmm. Renovating a school can run about $40 million, says the district, and rebuilding one completely can be nearly double that. So they're in kind of a rock and a hard place, but the community would say there hasn't been enough input as to which schools to close. Some of the transfers are less than ideal. For example, Port Houston elementary families are going to be transferred to Pleasantville Elementary, which has a similar FCI, that facility condition index. So it's not in a great building, but has a lower academic rating. So some of these decisions or some of these moves have really been questioned by the public.
So is it straight across the board the criteria they used for closing each school, that they're all being held to the same standard, or did we see variation in different areas and schools they chose?
They did assess a lot of the schools from enrollment dips and the FCI, that facility condition index, but these have to be the way that they were talking last night is that some of this is subjective and what is the best of the two bad options. That's what Miles said with that example between Port Houston and Pleasantville. He talked about that area specifically not having a single great school with a high FCI. So there are some standards here that they're trying to evaluate school to school, but at times these decisions were made with the best option on the table.
So what happens to the teachers?
Yeah, if the teachers are in good standing and staff teachers and would have returned to the school the next year, they are guaranteed placement in the district, relocated somewhere. Somewhere. And we know that HISD began surveying teachers last week before the board officially voted for the closures, asking teachers where they might want to be relocated and what schools they might want to see themselves at. That's also going to be based on skill level, skill match, and availability in other campuses.
It's a good YouTube question that we just got. How do we have any information on how many students will be in each classroom after the changes? So you take all these kids and put them in another school. Obviously, they got to sit somewhere.
Yeah, the district said last night that they had evaluated which schools could absorb the new numbers. We haven't gotten any numbers about what the class sizes will look like, but yeah, that's a question on a lot of parents' minds. What will my new class look like when the schools merge?
And again, 713-440-8870. You're listening to Hello Houston. Let's go to Chris from Cyprus, who's on the line. Chris, welcome to Hello Houston. What is your comment or question?
Hi, thanks for taking my call. My comment is about the board being here in its entirety. If some of the schools were in trouble, I could see them stepping in and, helping those schools get up to par, but taking over the entire district and then saying you're not going to close any schools and then to turn back. You've got money for IC, you've got money to build a wall, they've got money to put towards education. I think they can do better.
Thank you for that call. I guess I want to go back to also the comment you made about declining enrollment. And what are we, and I don't know if this really fits the story exactly, but what are we attributing that to? And therefore, less students, you don't need as many facilities, and they cost money to run these facilities. So I'm curious what's leading to that. Is it the school voucher idea and people moving to private schools? Is it simply there aren't the bodies to fill the schools? What's going on?
Yeah, there are a number of factors that contribute to a dip in enrollment, right? So this has been happening for several years, a steady decline in enrollment. There was a report from the University of Houston that showed an accelerated dip in enrollment after the state takeover, but we're also looking at declining birth rates, people moving out of Houston in general. So we've gone in the last, 10 years from about 200,000 students, which is what the district is built to teach, to about 168,000. So a huge loss in a number of students where these schools just don't have the same students filling these desks. So how do you grapple with that loss of state funding, because enrollment is directly tied to that, and some of these aging facilities?
I'm kind of looking at it kind of like flights. If you don't have enough people to fill the plane, they consolidate the flights down so that they're cost effective to go, because if you don't have enough bodies in the seats, that's what funds the building.
Yeah, it can make sense from a business standpoint. But again, and Miles reiterated this in his first presentation to the board, that these are community schools and they make such an impact. So while there is the argument that the district can't afford to have all these schools, or it doesn't make sense to have all these schools continue to stay open, they are, hearts of the community. When I was at the Port Houston rally, that is a school. Port Houston is 95% Hispanic, 65% with limited English proficiency. This is a tight-knit community that has really banded together to help navigate the school system, help, families kind of raise their kids. And so for them to lose their school there, they've told me devastating. They're heartbroken to lose their community school.
Were these all high schools, or were they mixed with elementary and middle schools?
Largely, it's elementary schools. That's the bulk of the list here. There's a couple of the more higher education, but largely they're elementary schools, and they're clustered in the same kind of underserved and low income area, which parents took notice of.
Which kind of better to close elementary than high school. If you're in your last 4 years of school and your high school gets closed, and this was going to, next year was your senior year, it would be, at least psychologically, a lot worse than it already is.
I think it's still a pretty big hit for the community in general. If you're a sixth grader or you're a kindergartner, and a lot of these schools have generations of families that have gone there. I talked to people at Port Houston that, their sister went there when they were a kid, or their daughters are now going after they had attendance. So these are pillars of the community. It's a big loss.
And I think that as a parent or as a teacher, as we use the word community, you also have to think about commutes and bus routes. And you have to start thinking about, as we were talking about classroom, the number of students in a classroom. How common is it to have this type of disruption happen to a community when we're looking at school closures?
Yeah, it's definitely a lever that districts have pulled in the past. And we see it here in neighboring districts like Aldine or Fort Bend have considered closures and pushed forward. Miles also pointed to a number of districts across the state that are smaller than Houston that have also pulled for closures. So it's definitely something that's been used by districts to help staunch those bleeds in the budget, but they're never popular.
Correct. And 12 seems like a lot. What percentage of that would you say, or maybe I'm not going to put you on the and have do us math right now, but is that compared to a smaller district? We hear 12 and we're like, oh my gosh, but we also are one of the largest school districts.
Schools do we have?
So how
Hundreds.
much? I think there's hundreds, over 130, almost 200 schools from. Okay. So my question then becomes: is this about a normal range, or does this seem excessive?
I really can't give context for how normal a range this might be. HISD, to your point, has hundreds of campuses to monitor. One thing that I would note that I think is on the same path is that 100 of these campuses are being evaluated for their FCI, that Facility Condition Index. So these 12 schools being closed are not alone in their struggle to keep up with their aging infrastructure.
Correct. So to Ernie, your analogy of the planes, it would be like an airline saying, we need everybody off this plane because there is some, it's not in great condition, but we're going to move you to this other plane that's already full, and it also has bad conditions.
That's an interesting analogy.
Yeah, it is.
I want to go back and point. It's approximately 270 schools we have in the district, and so it's funny to me that we're talking 12 out of 270 doesn't seem like a lot, but when you think about them as the heart of communities and stuff. The other question that I have is, there's a lot of concern about it. Were there alternate plans put out in lieu of closing schools?
We didn't see any alternate plans from the district. We know that the district had delayed closures for some time now. It's been a couple of years since they had announced any closures. So it could appear that maybe they were looking for other options before bringing closures. In December, like I said, Miles had paused plans for closures and committed to not closing schools this year. He said that, after coming back from the winter break, they reevaluated and decided it was a necessity, that they couldn't do anything to avoid that. The other thing that I know that it's only 12 schools in the more than 200 that we have here, but they are concentrated in one area. I mean, they're quite close to each other on the eastern side of the district, and they are in those underserved and low-income areas. Miles admitted as much, that you're going to see that same kind of that intersection of the closed schools that are closing and where the communities that they're they're serving.
And so if the FCI index is the same at the schools that they're going to be potentially moving these students to, how did they decide which ones to move them to?
Yeah, they said it was kind of a case by case. So the FCIs are similar, like in that example from Port Houston to Pleasantville, but ultimately they decided that Pleasantville had more capacity overall to absorb the students. The parents disagree with that. When I talk to Port Houston parents, they're very displeased with the transfer to Pleasantville. So we'll have to see how many of them choose to move forward with that transfer, or because they've extended school choice by only a week, if the parents decide to send their kids somewhere else.
Bianca Seward is a Houston public media reporter, and we want to thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston. If you would like to continue to learn more about this, you can go to houstonpublicmedia.org. Bianca, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll speak with Tony Payan, a fellow in U.S. Mexico Studies at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy, on the latest going on in Mexico. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
Meet Tio Choco. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. This is his story. Visit ridemetro.org/Choco to find out where is Choco.
Story coming up on the Splendid Table.
That's Sunday at 12 on News 88.7.
I'm Anita Rao. Writer Tananarive Due has always loved horror. But after experiencing real-life trauma, she started to notice its healing potential.
I really think for a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people are able to use that fantasy lens of horror to confront trauma. Actually, horror helps you cope during hard times.
A conversation about the power of horror, next time on Embodied.
Embodied at 8 p.m. on Sunday on News 88.7.
What do you get when you mix the rhythm section of an iconic punk rock band with two jazz virtuosos?
It always ends up being a mixed audience. You know, you got your old punk rockers in the building, you got jazz people in the building. Our worlds collide in very healthy, natural ways.
The Mesthetics and James Brandon Lewis, that story, and all the latest news Sunday on Weekend Edition from NPR News.
You can listen Sunday from 7 to 9 in the morning here on News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro, introducing the Ride Metro Fare Card. The Ride Metro fare system replaces the Metro Q Fare Card for bus and rail fares. Details at ridemetro.org/fare system. Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from the Holdsworth Center, taking nominations to honor teachers in the Houston area to re-energize at a wellness retreat in the Texas Hill Country. Nomination information at teacherretreat.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Last week, Mexican agents, aided by American intelligence, captured and killed El Mencho, the leader of the notorious Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJNG. The death of El Mencho, whose real name is Nemesio Osuguera Cervantes, led to a surge of violent retaliation across Mexico by cartel members operating throughout the country. The gang has reached across the U.S., including here in Texas. Governor Greg Abbott announced that state police are working with the U.S. State Department and the FBI following the recent events. To tell us more about the situation in Mexico and beyond, we welcome Tony Payan, fellow in U.S. Mexico Studies at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy. Tony, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So to give us a little bit of context, Tony, when we look at the broader history of cartel leadership takedowns, was this one of the leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel different in any way?
Well, the only difference that I see is that this was a very important individual. He was the leader of a very powerful cartel, unlike any other thing we've seen in Mexico. Having said that, I think that part of the problem is that it continues to be along the lines of the drug kingpin strategy. That is, going after highly valued targets, beheading the cartels. That's been done for decades now, and nothing changes. Capos have been extradited, imprisoned, gunned down, and the organizations continue. There's always some reshuffling. There's always a spasm of violence, sometimes because lieutenants try to vie for succession in the leadership of the cartel, sometimes because other criminal groups try to move into those spaces, taking advantage of the weakness, the momentary weakness of the organization because the leader has been killed or extradited or imprisoned. But at the end of the day, I think we know, and I think this proves the point one more time, that while it is important to go after these very big capos, at the end of the day, the landscape doesn't substantially change.
So if you can't kill the snake by chopping off the head, how do you kill the snake?
That's a very good question. And of course, it's a question that must be answered. There are several structural issues that we have in regards to Mexico. Number one, Mexico changes presidents every 6 years. And every president comes in reinventing the wheel. And that's a very serious problem when it comes to the rule of law in Mexico, because some presidents do not want to pay the cost of, the political cost, so to speak, violence, inciting violence through the beheading of a cartel, confronting organized crime outright. And so what they do is they let up. So we saw it between 2007 and 2012 that Calderon, then president of Mexico, went straight out, created a very aggressive strategy to go after many different cartels. Violence spiked to levels unseen before. And then when the Peña administration came in between 2012 and 2018, he let up a little bit. He continued some of that strategy, working with the United States a little bit, sort of low-handedly, but it didn't really work. It didn't really damage the structure of organized crime in Mexico. And so the López Obrador administration, which came in 2018, between 2018 and 24, implemented a new strategy, I think overlearning the lesson of the Calderon administration, that confronting this problem sometimes creates more violence, more deaths, more confrontation among cartels, and he completely let up. His strategy, we've talked about that before, was abrazos no balazos, hugs not bullets, non-confrontation. We're not going after organized crime. And of course, it wasn't just that. There's obviously very many accusations that his political coalition, in fact, took financing from organized crime. At the end of the day, he didn't do anything about that. And of course, when Sheinbaum comes into office in 24, he has a much, much greater problem, a very powerful cartel. So the big issue here is Mexico has not really had a fixed strategy to implement a rule of law system that transcends politics, that transcends administrations. And of course, in that, I think we also have to think about U.S. collaboration. Sometimes it's welcome, sometimes it's limited. Mr. López Obrador completely sent it back, didn't want to work with the United States, but now the Trump administration is exercising a lot of pressure on the Sheinbaum administration to let the United States help. And I think this particular operation against El Mencho showed that the Trump administration is very serious about that, and she has no choice but to collaborate with the United States.
But she is really between a rock and a hard place. As you say, and put it so brilliantly, the cartels have existed with the government. They're almost the fourth branch of government down there. It's just been that way like forever. And so now Trump comes in and says, well, we're going to change it and you're going to go after them. And it may cause a civil war in your country, but you're going to do it. Or you're going to face us. And what does she do? Well, if you were her advisor, Sheinbaum's advisor, what would you tell her she needs to do?
Well, you're absolutely right. Let me back up for a second to answer your question and tell you that the Trump administration was very, very clear. This embeddedness of organized crime within the government structure, their ability to dominate highways and roads and villages and towns and numerous economic activities, and essentially co-opt governors and mayors and a lot of the political class by imposing candidates, by financing candidates and things like that, are not acceptable to the United States. It was made very clear early on, and the Trump administration pushed Sheinbaum to accept U.S. intervention. And I think the U.S. During the last year, I think, used a strategy that we could potentially call it carrots and sticks. The sticks, of course, was if you don't do it, we're going to do it. We're going to initiate operations, and it's quite possible. I mean, look, the U.S. has already demonstrated the ability to go into a country and conduct operations and then pull out. Maduro is one example. In 3 hours, they went into Caracas, took out the president, brought him to the United States, and that was the end of it. And also last year, we saw that U.S. operatives kidnapped El Mayo Zambada, a very big figure in the Mexican criminal underworld, out of Sinaloa and landed in Santa Teresa, New Mexico, and the Mexican government really didn't know. And we also know that much of the intelligence that was used against El Mencho was gathered by a drone, Predator drone, that flew 20,000 feet above the state of Jalisco, gathering information, actionable information to go against El Mencho. So the U.S. clearly has proven that it's got the capability that if Sheinbaum didn't accept U.S. cooperation, so to speak, they were going to go it alone. That's the sticks. Of course, the carrot is the USMCA. We have to remember that on January 28th, the renegotiations for the USMCA started, and they're supposed to be done by July 1st. And I think the president was very clear. You know, this is a condition. If you want to continue to have access to the U.S. market, to U.S. capital, and thus far, Mexico has not been a whole lot hurt by the tariffs. Everything that qualifies for 0% tariffs under the USMCA, it's still paying 0%, both for Canada and Mexico. But clearly, Trump has been toying around with the idea of pulling the United States out, imposing tariffs on Mexico and such. So there's a carrot there. I think Mexico stands to gain a lot, particularly because its economy is not performing very well. So it's a very smart strategy. You know, whatever you say about Trump, and we may or may not agree with a lot of his things that he does and style of doing things, but on this particular thing, he's clearly played it well. And I think Sheinbaum is between, I guess, a rock and a hard place, particularly because her political coalition is so compromised, and Mr. López Obrador is part of that compromised political coalition, and of course Trump, who's pushing her very, very hard.
But you know, Tony, and to that point, you mentioned how cartels are so ingrained in multiple levels within Mexican culture, government, and economics. So does the death of a cartel leader really meaningfully weaken the organization? And what is kind of the Mexican nationals' perception of what's happening within their country?
Yes, for a very long time. Well, a couple of things. I think we need to sort of break down the question because I think there's a number of things. Let me just say that the evidence, I think, the historical evidence and the literature, the academic literature, clearly shows that a cartel doesn't go away because its leader has been caught, captured, or extradited. Or even killed. The organizations often continue. That's the case with the Sinaloa cartel. But the Sinaloa cartel, I think, is illustrative. When El Chapo Guzman was finally extradited to the United States, and it's now serving time, I think, in a high security prison in the United States, what ensued was a fight among two different groups of the Sinaloa cartel, Los Mallitos, which was essentially his heirs, and another group. And so they've been going at it for a long time. The violence that we see in the state of Sinaloa today, and that has been ongoing for months, is an example of what can happen when a capo gets captured and there's no one, specifically an heir, to take control of the organization. That's one instance. So in other places like Los Zetas, clearly what has happened is that they've been subsumed into other cartels. Los Zetas, for example, are part of the cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación. When the leaders were killed and captured, and some of them in Cuernavaca in 2009. The cartel essentially dissolved, but it was a lot of its activities and a lot of its operatives were absorbed into the cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación and eventually made it a much more powerful group. And in other places, they do get extinguished. The Tijuana cartel is one example. Eventually, it kind of went away. So we have to play with scenarios. What's going to happen with this particular cartel? thus far, it seems that there is a clear successor, the El Mencho's stepson. So it's quite possible that he may now be the new leader, and now the U.S. and the Mexican government have to go after him. But it is quite possible that some groups will begin to toy around with other cartels, like Los Guerreros Unidos, and then they may coalesce, and then you may have some inter-cartel violence. So I think we have to think about this in terms of scenarios, particularly because this was a very powerful cartel with presence in at least 20 Mexican states and activities that went from real estate fraud to fuel smuggling to fentanyl smuggling, bringing the precursors from China and Asia to extracting resources through extortion from farmers and businesses throughout Mexico to human trafficking and human smuggling. This is a very powerful cartel with a lot of activities. And so I think at the end of the day, there may be some competition. So we don't know. This may play out over the next few weeks. But thus far, it seems that there is a clear successor, and now both governments will have to determine what to do next.
As a more mere casual observer than you by any means, it seemed as though the Mexican president, she came out and she made it very clear that this was their decision, that Mexico decided to do it, that Mexico was going after it. Talk to me a little bit about the political play and understanding to the Mexican people when it looks like the U.S. is forcing the hand of the government there. Is there acceptance and appreciation of that because of what cartels are doing, or is there a resistance and an anger toward that kind of interaction?
Yeah, that sort of comes to I guess extend the question that I guess I didn't answer the entire question about the Mexican
perception,
people's perception,
Yeah.
right? Look, I think in Mexico, the price that Mexicans paid for the Calderon administration's strategy and all-out confrontation with organized crime was very high. Lots of people dead all over the country, lots of violence. It spiked very high, but also letting up under the López Obrador administration, when it decided not to confront organized crime, the number of homicides and the violence in Mexico doubled. So clearly not confronting organized crime didn't pay off either. Wow. So at this point, there is enough evidence among the Mexican people that the government at the end of the day is going to have to take on organized crime, that doing it will cost, but not doing it may cost even more.
Right.
And so there is a consensus that the country needs to work on the rule of law, that this criminal activity has to be fought. Organized crime groups have to be fought. And I think there is some willingness, certainly at least half of the population, to assume the costs of confronting organized crime. So at this point, I think history has taught us that not doing it is simply going to cost even more. And what's going to happen is that another organization or the same organization, Jalisco New Generation Cartel, is going to come in and expand its reach into the Mexican territory or other activities. So I think many Mexicans, in fact, maybe not a majority, but many Mexicans certainly appreciate the fact that the Trump administration is finally pushing the Mexican government to do something. Now, Trump took some credit for this during the State of the Union address. President Sheinbaum has said that it was a Mexican sovereign decision. I think it was somewhere in the middle. She was pushed into it. She had no choice. And the only thing she had to do, I think in some ways, I think of it as the Mexican army did it. It was the hand that did it, that pulled the trigger. But I think of the United States as the arm, because they moved the situation, put it into place, provided the actionable intelligence, and ensured that the Mexican army did it. I think U.S. involvement is not yet altogether clear, but it certainly was much deeper than the Sheinbaum administration might be willing to admit.
Well, and Sheinbaum has made the remark that they get their guns from the United States. So there's that. What can the United States do other than just tell her to do something?
Yeah, this is a really important question, because I think most of us may want to think that this is a Mexican problem. This is not a Mexican problem. This is a binational problem. And I cannot remark that. I cannot underline that enough. It is both countries. First, there's two important blocks of organized crime that occur in Mexico, and potentially three. One of them is, of course, that 70-80% of all the firepower that cartels in Mexico have are essentially guns, grenade launchers, ammunition and drones and equipment brought from the United States. The United States does not have a clear control of the arsenal that circulates in the industry in the United States, and a lot of it ends up in Mexico, gets smuggled, gets bought, and certainly comes back as a blowback to us because the violence in Mexico clearly affects us. If the United States is very serious, they're also going to have to include that piece within the negotiations and the strategy. That's going to be. They don't want to. They don't seem to be willing to talk about that. Certainly, the Trump administration doesn't want to talk about that, but that is certainly an important component. The next component is, of course, that we need to invest a lot more on our addiction. 35 million Americans, about 10%, are addicted to drugs at some level or another, from casual to very hardcore addiction. We need to invest money in clearly reducing our dependence on drugs because it creates the pull force. Mexico may be on the push side, but we also have the pull force. And the other thing is, look, we have the third thing is that we have the responsibility to ensure that the ill-gotten profits of these criminal organizations, many of which have branches in the United States, because you have to think of this as a pyramid. At the top are the capos, and then the lieutenants who prepare the drugs, move them to the border, move them across the border, but then it becomes a much finer network of distributors within the United States, and that's clearly our business. The drug distribution in apartment complexes, in corners, in parties, in should I say discotheques, or am I aging myself? I'm not sure. The bars and the clubs, that's clearly here. So it needs to be a more comprehensive and truly binational strategy that considers not just organized crime and victims in Mexico, but how we ourselves. And we launder money, a lot of money laundering going. We had a book at the Baker Institute about money laundering in Texas, in real estate, in investments. We don't ask a whole lot of questions about that money. We also need to take a look at that. It's time for both countries to really, really have a long-term strategy, comprehensive strategy to deal with all these different issues.
Tony answered my question.
Oh, well, then I've got my last question to wrap this all up. All of this is very important, and we need to understand the landscape. At the end of the day, there's an awful lot of travel that goes on between Houston and into Mexico, a lot of different cities down there. Is it safe right now to travel again? We saw so much on the news, but then we heard reports out that those were isolated events, and maybe the way it was shown wasn't the whole country inflamed in panic. What's the reality on the ground?
I think to answer your question, I'll break it down in two. Number one, what's the territorial reach? Of course, there was reaction in at least 20 Mexican states, and there were cars burned and banks and shopping centers and buildings burned and roads blocked and trucks burned. And I mean, it was a lot. It was hundreds and hundreds of incidents. So I think that territorially, the violent spasm was throughout the country. It was very widespread in about 20 states. So but it was expected. It was a reaction. It was the price to pay. There was going to be a reaction, and then it's going to start dying down. Some places in Mexico will remain very dangerous. I wouldn't go to Michoacan. I wouldn't go to Sinaloa. I would go to certain parts of Jalisco, for example. But a lot of other places in Mexico, like Querétaro and Yucatan, Mexico City, are fairly safe, and I think it's good to go. So I wouldn't say don't go. I wouldn't say go. I would simply say, think carefully about where you're going, think carefully about what you're doing, who you're hanging out with, what places you're visiting, what people having interactions with. And there are some places that will be fine and some that will not be fine. I think the State Department continuously updates its travel warnings. And I think any citizen that wants to go to Mexico should really visit the page and make sure that they understand well. So I think it depends on the reason for travel and the place to travel and what you're doing in Mexico. Eventually it'll subside in time. I think there'll be more places that will be safer, but considering place and time and activity is important to make that decision.
Tony Payan is the fellow in U.S. Mexico Studies at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy. Tony, it's always great to have you on Hello Houston. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, we're going to preview English at the Alley Theater. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
Houston Matters.
Meet Gamola, songwriter, world-class violinist, and award-winning multi-genre artist. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. Visit ridemetro.org/Gamola to learn more about his ride.
Program to stream online at your leisure at houstonpublicmedia.org. And reach out with questions or comments anytime. Email us at talk@houstonmatters.org.
This week on The Sam Sanders Show, one of my favorite movie stars ever gets real.
It's so funny. I was thinking about this the other day. Like, doing interviews makes you reflect on things you haven't reflected on, and then you have to answer it in the moment. And you're like, wait, I've never reflected on this.
Kate Hudson on her Oscar nomination, The Craft of Acting, and the Power of Being Vulnerable.
The Sam Sanders Show, Sunday at 6 p.m.
Toby meets John. And John likes dogs, too. And John tells Toby the sweet nothings, but John's incarcerated. So what would be the harm in sneaking John a phone? For Snap Judgment's Fever series, The Great Escape. Snap Judgment. Do not miss it.
Snap Judgment tomorrow at 8 p.m. here on News 88.7.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
English is a Pulitzer Prize-winning play that follows 4 Iranians as they prepare for the test of English as a foreign language, known as TOEFL, which will determine whether they will be able to pursue their various ambitions. Set in an English language classroom, we follow these individuals as they navigate both cultural and personal hardships, forming unlikely friendships with each other in the process. The play is currently running at the Alley Theater through March 8th. To tell us more about English, we're joined by actress Pantea Ommi, who plays Roya in the Pulitzer Prize-winning play. Pantea, did I say that name right?
Pantea, yes.
Pantea, it's so nice that you're here with us.
Thank you for having me.
So not a lot of people are familiar with the play English, but it sounds fascinating because we're talking about the language and the kind of barriers that language does create within our whole world, obviously. So tell us more about what we're expecting to see here.
Yeah, that one of my favorite things about this show is that there is a universality to it because it's not very specifically Iranian. It does take place in Iran. It does take place at a very specific time in Iran. All the characters are Iranian, but the crux of the play is that you're dealing with people who are trying to upend their lives and change them in one way or another, and they have to learn this new language in order to do that. And I think that that's something, it's a struggle that people all over the world have to deal with when they need to relocate for any number of reasons, whether it's for safety, security, job aspirations, reconnecting with family. And so there's this level of connection that we have from all audiences from all areas of the world that come in, and that's one of my favorite things about the show.
Yeah.
Nice.
When was this written?
It was written, when was the first Muslim ban? I'm blanking on the year.
I'll look it up because I'm just kind of curious how it changes meaning as we watch our world around us, and today more than ever changing so quickly and shifting how we see others and how we include.
Absolutely. I think there is that element of, unfortunately, this show is still relevant, as relevant today as it was when it was first released. And so you also deal with an interesting case where the play was written in response to that first Muslim ban. And I know you're going to have that date in a second.
Yeah, 2023. I just knew that.
2000. That was the second one.
2022.
So
that's what it says. The play.
The first one was when it was written. The second Muslim ban is when it got its I think Tony nomination. So there were these moments, and I might be getting those dates wrong, but it's very interesting.
Are you referring to when Trump just suddenly, like his first term, about a year into it? So it'd be 2017, 2018?
Yes,
there we
written
go.
in response to 2017, but the play takes place in 2009.
Yeah, and he just had these countries. No one's coming in from these countries.
Yeah, exactly. And so
it's set in 2008.
Right.
In 2008 during the Green leading up the period of time leading right up to the Green Revolution in Iran. And so you see that not directly in the play, but it can be peppered into the play it's up to the director to do that if they want to pepper in that kind of political narrative. But the show itself has zero political commentary within it. It's mostly about these human beings living this human experience, trying to redefine who they are and where they live and where they belong. It is a show about belonging.
And which I feel like so many people right now, regardless if you're from Iran or you're from Mexico, wherever, even if you're American, belonging is so important, that feeling. Everybody at a certain point in their life feels like perhaps they don't belong.
Absolutely. You know, I know of me personally, I was born in Iran. I moved to Los Angeles with my family. I moved a few years after the 79 revolution there. And so for me personally, there's always been that struggle of, where do I belong?
Sure.
I'm Iranian. Do I belong there?
Right.
I'm an American citizen. Do I belong here? And I feel like my name, my appearance, the country of origin in my passport would lead some to believe that I don't belong here. But if I were to be uprooted and moved to Iran, I think I've been separated from my culture there for so long that then that would happen to me all over again. Now I don't belong here. And so and that struggle is also dealt with in this production, is there that struggle of when you are born one place and live in another, of having to straddle that and having to try to fit in both places and yet somehow failing miserably in both places.
Look at the reality of today with so many people being deported that speak nothing but English.
Right.
And they're being deported to countries that don't speak English.
Countries where they don't speak the language, where they don't feel safe for whatever reasons within their how they think, how they live, how they choose to identify themselves. Countries where they're being put at risk.
Common language is the first step to safety. Yeah. I mean, where am I? Where's my hotel? Can you please help me? I'm in trouble. I mean, if you can't communicate in the same language, you're out in the middle of the ocean by yourself.
Right. Yeah, there is also this level of humanity to trying to communicate with people when we don't have that common language, of having to really slow down, look someone in the eye, see what ways that you can figure out to understand what you're saying. And so, yes, that common language is so important on a surface level for us to engage and connect with one another. But at the end of the day, I think there's a core heart essence of we can not understand each other but still care for each other and still offer compassion and safety to one another.
You were going to say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. In crafting the character, I'm curious, we're talking about a different time, a different place, where so in some ways very far removed from where we are today as people in our culture. How do you get into her, a soft-spoken, but with that fiery edge to it, and approaching the world from maybe someone in that region looking at it that way, and removing all of what you see today and how you have evolved to who we are?
Yeah, well, I love that question. And I think that, again, not to overuse the word universality, but I think that comes back to it, is for me personally as an actor, I'm lucky in that I am born and raised in Iran. I have a, almost fully Iranian family. This character, Roya, is in many, I've done this production twice. The first time I did the production, I pulled that character from one of my cousins, and just all of her mannerisms and the way she speaks and the way she moves and everything, because that was a look and feel that particular director was going for. In this show, it was a 180. I didn't know a single show could have such a 180 in characters, and that's what makes this show so magical. But then for this production, I had the joy of living in my grandmother's body, and so I'm very lucky in that. But you would think that that's because it's an Iranian play and Roya is an Iranian character, so I pulled from my Iranian grandmother. But again, you have people from all other countries who come into the show who come up to me and say, that was my grandmother.
Right. Yes.
Right. I know that woman. Those hands, my grandmother uses her hands. And I'm like, that connection. I love that.
And when you use the word connection, and I kept thinking that even though you look for commonality, there's also hope in community.
Yeah.
When you find your community.
Absolutely. And there's also this hope when you find your community in a community that you think you won't. When there are people from other countries who come see the show, who come up to you with tears in their eyes or joy on their face, and they feel that connection with you, and that there's just this rush in seeing someone face to face who you would think you have no similarities with. and yet you're both crying over the same thing. And that's
Beautiful.
amazing.
Actress Pantea Ommi is playing the role of Roya in the Pulitzer Prize-winning play English. Pantea, thank you for joining us today on
Thank you so
Hello
much for
Houston.
having me.
English is currently running at Alley Theater through Sunday, March 8th. For more information, visit alleytheater.org. Coming up, we'll continue discussing today's top headlines. We'll also talk with Jamie Bryant, the president and CEO of Housing Alliance HTX. Stay with us for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro. Introducing the Ride Metro Fare Card. The Ride Metro Fare system replaces the Metro Q Fare Card for bus and rail fares. Details at ridemetro.org/fare system.
Nice the rest of the day. Sunny skies, the high of around 83. Low tonight around 58 with clear skies. Maybe some patchy fog later on. This is your NPR station, KUHF Houston, News 88.7. It's a service of the University of Houston. It's noon.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton told a congressional committee that she had no knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal activities. We'll discuss her testimony and more of today's top headlines. I'm Ernie Manous.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. We'll also talk with Housing Alliance HTX CEO Jamie Bryant about the organization's recent name change, as well as what he has planned for his second year in this leadership role.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. Plus, we'll also share a list of events happening this weekend in Houston for our regular Friday feature, Last Minute Plans.
Also, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Former President Bill Clinton is testifying before the House Oversight Committee at a closed-door hearing in New York. It's part of the panel's investigation into the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, who died in jail in 2019. NPR's Sage Miller reports Clinton's interactions with Epstein included meetings when he was president.
The committee wants details about Clinton and Epstein's relationship. Republican Committee Chair James Comer told reporters ahead of the deposition that they have a lot of questions for the former president.
Jeffrey Epstein was in the White House 17 times while Bill Clinton was president. We know that Bill Clinton flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane at least 27 times. So those are questions that we're going to ask.
It's expected to be a long deposition and will likely exceed 6 hours. Clinton's opening statement asserts that he had no idea about the crimes Epstein was committing, saw nothing that gave him pause, and did nothing wrong. Sage Miller, NPR News.
The father charged with giving his teenage son access to the firearm used in a 2024 Georgia school shooting has taken the stand in his own trial. Colin Gray says he had no indication his child could be responsible for a massacre.
The Colt I knew, the relationship I had, there's this whole other side of Colt I didn't know existed.
The 55-year-old has pleaded not guilty to second-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter, among other charges. The shooting at Appalachia High School killed 4 people. A group of congressional Democrats says the U.S. military used a laser to shoot down a Customs and Border Protection drone. The Federal Aviation Administration closed an area around Fort Hancock, about 50 miles from El Paso. No commercial flights were affected. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth announced on X that the Pentagon will continue supporting Scouting America with conditions. But, as NPR's Graham Smith tells us, he didn't get everything he wanted.
Hegseth was prepared to bar troops from meeting on military bases and refuse assistance to the National Jamboree. Instead, he said he'd give them a chance to prove they could work within the Trump administration's anti-DEI policies. Scouting has agreed to drop one merit badge and require scouts to register as the sex assigned at birth, an anti-trans demand. If Hegseth isn't happy in 6 months,
we will find them in violation of the president's executive order and cease our support. We hope that doesn't happen, but it could.
Hegseth had wanted more. According to a Scouting spokesman, he demanded at a January meeting that they kick all 200,000 girls out and change the name back to Boy Scouts. The president of Scouting refused, according to the spokesman, and offered other moves more consistent with the group's promise to welcome all youth. Graham Smith, NPR News.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average is now down 656 points, or 1.3%, at 48,845. This is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. Houston ISD's state-appointed Board of Managers voted unanimously to close 12 schools in the district. The decision has sparked major backlash from the community. Nearly 80 parents, students, and elected officials spoke Thursday night to the board, all opposing the closures. Tensions at the meeting quickly escalated. One HISD parent, Sim Kern, was carried out by an HISD officer after refusing to end her remarks. Daisy Mariano, a parent at Port Houston Elementary, says she believes the board had already made up their mind.
They had so many parents out here, and they chose not to listen.
For more on this story and the full list of affected schools, visit houstonpublicmedia.org. The Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo Parade officially begins tomorrow. News 88.7's Matt Harrop has a preview.
The parade will begin at 10 a.m. tomorrow. U.S. Coast Guard Petty Officer Scott Ruskin will be the Grand Marshal. He's a rescue swimmer who rose to prominence for helping during the July 4th flash floods in Kirk County last summer. He's credited with saving 165 children from the floodwaters. The parade will feature decorative floats and thousands of cowboys and cowgirls on horseback. The route will begin at Bagby Street and move downtown. Street closures are expected to begin Saturday morning at 8:30 a.m. and will reopen around 2 in the afternoon.
That's Matt Harrop reporting. The city of Houston has fallen dramatically short of its fundraising goal for Mayor John Whitmire's effort to end street homelessness. The city council created the fund 1 year ago with a goal of $70 million, but the city has only raised $31 million. Housing Director Mike Nichols told Houston Public Media the goal will have to be reevaluated, but the mayor's administration is still looking for other sources.
We haven't moved as fast as I've wanted, but we certainly have moved in the right direction.
For now, the city is leaning on one-time disaster recovery funding tied to Hurricane Beryl to bridge the gap. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Lodestar Foundation, inspired by the maxim that helping someone else less fortunate is a path to a happier, healthier, and more meaningful life. Learn more at lodestarfoundation.org. This is NPR.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Hello Houston with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Howdy, howdy. Happy
Hello.
Go Texan Day. Today is February 27th, 2026. It's like, what day is it?
Yeehaw.
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 Go
I
Texas
feel like
Day, right?
Ernie Texas host. What's it? Ernie Texas Ranger. I'm trying to come up with a good one.
You should have started thinking about that.
Yeah, I know. You know, they say don't go for it if you ain't got it, and I didn't got it. So there you go. But we are all, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can see us all decked out. We've gone Texan. Have you? If you have, snap a picture and then tag it and put it up on Instagram. Put it at HelloHouston.show, and then we can see the pictures and share them around. Let's see what spirit are you in today when it comes to Go Texas? You look very, very happy right over there. You just
Oh, well, I mean, we have the barbecue cook-off that's going on.
Yeah.
The trail riders are coming in. The parade's tomorrow. Then we get ready for rodeo next week.
And Frank, you love barbecue, right?
I could probably, if I had to choose one food to eat every day for the rest of my life, it would be barbecue.
Yeah.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I was.
What would you
remember
choose?
that.
A pizza.
And?
Oh, if I could eat one thing for the rest of my life, it'd be fajitas. Hot fajitas, sizzling fajitas
Chicken
with
or
the
beef?
onion,
That's
beef.
barbecue-ish. You
Yeah.
know.
With
See,
rice, beans, tortillas. Ooh.
I love
bring it.
barbecue. I love the idea of barbecue. I
Salsa.
love to eat barbecue. Something in the spices of barbecue as I have gotten more advanced in age. I have noticed don't agree with me as much as they did when I was younger. But I don't know exactly what it is, because sometimes some barbecue won't bug me or make my tummy hurt, but others do. But that doesn't stop me from judging the barbecue cook-off, which I am so honored to get to do each year. I get to judge brisket.
I like to eat barbecue in the spring and summertime.
Oh,
I'm a seasonal barbecue eater.
Oh, but a nice cold fall day with some good barbecue. Oh, okay, are you spices or
Look at that
sauce?
shot. If you're watching us on
Sauce.
YouTube, look at that
Sauce.
rodeo shot.
That is beautiful. Yeah, it's a beautiful day out there. Frank, what can people expect?
You know, it's going to be a beautiful weekend. Temperatures 60 for a low, 80 for a high.
Love it.
So generally, you know, in the afternoon, it'll be in the upper 70s. In the evening, we'll see those temperatures fall right down to about 70. So great cook-off weather, which it isn't always. Great trail riding weather, which it isn't always. Great parade weather. So everything is really just coming up rodeo.
I like it. Braden Arnold on our YouTube says, y'all can really rock the cowboy hats.
Oh,
we
thank
are
you.
working our rodeo attire today. We really are.
Yeah, but the problem is we've got 2 days where we're shooting live at the rodeo, and I've already worn all my rodeo gig in one day. This is the whole thing I got.
Oh,
I ain't
wow.
got anything else.
You've got all weekend to go shopping.
Pretend you haven't seen it when it comes back around. We took a poll over on YouTube. Houston Rodeo this year, are you going? Well, 47% of those responded said, sitting this one out. And then 41% said, yes, let's rodeo. And 12% said, we're thinking about it.
So if you happen to be at the rodeo on the 5th and the 11th, we'll be out there.
She has no interest in the poll. She just went right back to coming and visiting us because we'll be there.
Yeah.
Another thing to remind really quickly.
It's not that I didn't have interest. I just don't know what you wanted me to say about it. Oh, great. Thank you for joining us on our poll. Thank you. Great
Remember,
poll.
you can vote somewhere else too. Today is the last day of early voting. So if you want to vote on something and you didn't vote on our poll, go out and vote for your elected officials. Election day is Tuesday. You'll have one more chance to vote. But boy, oh boy, is this a heated, contested race. Contested in the most positive way, at least. It's very active, and a lot of people are weighing in. They've had outrageous numbers for early voting along the lines and surpassing presidential early voting, which is great. People are out there doing it. So make sure you do it. Today's the last day to early vote.
And if you take a picture with your I voted sticker, be sure to tag us on Instagram at hellohouston.show. We love to see those.
Yeah. So all of that's going on, but you know what else is going on? The world around us. And oh my, there has been some testifying and hearings going on. Celeste, take us into the headlines.
Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton told members of Congress on Thursday that she had no knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell's crimes, starting off 2 days of depositions that will also include former President Bill Clinton. She said, I had no idea about their criminal activities. I do not recall ever encountering Mr. Epstein. And that was Hillary Clinton said in an opening statement she shared on social media. The closed-door depositions concluded Thursday after over 6 hours of Hillary Clinton giving an answer to every question. Quote, like every decent person, unquote, Hillary Clinton added in her opening statement, I have been horrified by what we have learned about their crimes. What do you think of Hillary's testimony? You can give us a call at 713-440-8870.
In talking about that, also, Bill Clinton is testifying today. To add another layer to this, he is already testifying in his opening statement, which was released on social media ahead of time. He said, I saw nothing and I did nothing wrong. And I can't help but think back, you're going to have to help me with this one, Frank, back to Hogan's Hero. Hogan's Hero. I saw nothing, I know nothing. What was that character's name?
Was it Clint? Yeah.
Yeah, but a famous refrain from the past.
This is really interesting, though, right? Because, you know, Ghislaine Maxwell was at the Chelsea Clinton's wedding back in 2010.
As a +1, according to Hillary. Some other guests +1.
Of the guy who created, it was from Gateway Computers. He was a big tech guy, and he was dating Ghislaine at that time and brought her as the +1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So an interesting thing there. I thought Hillary Clinton, I think, held her own. Now, we have not seen the full testimony, at least as of when we went on air. I don't know if it's been released since. They were talking about having it released within 24 hours. The video of her testimony and the actual transcript of her testimony, Democrats are calling for it to be released unedited so people can really see what was said in the exchange that happened. But she basically brought the point that they have had all of these people in, and the Republicans have asked none of them until her about either Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell. That they asked about everything else to these other, or even when Lex Wexner was testifying, the Republicans didn't even show up for that testimony, and yet he's all over the Epstein files. So, how much of this is really a fact-finding mission, and how much is it a political stunt?
Well, and how much should be investigated by people who investigate, not Congress.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
You know.
And
it's I go back to, it's like they're grading their own paper.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But, and of course, because now that Bill Clinton has been brought in front of this committee, now it opens the gates for us to bring in other presidents and ex-presidents. And the question is, okay, now does Donald Trump have to come forward? I'm sure Donald Trump is going to argue that he is a sitting president, and that's different than a past president, so he doesn't have to answer. But they point out next to Epstein and Maxwell, Trump is one of the most mentioned people in the Epstein files.
Well, it would be, I think we all know how it would go, even if he did testify.
Yeah.
They would ask him questions, and he would answer the way he wants to answer, and that would be that.
Yeah, I'm very curious. I want to read the full transcript, and so it'd be interesting to see what exactly was said. There was a heated moment because it was agreed upon. The Clintons wanted this to be broadcast so that people could see it as it happened. And it seemed as though the committee did not want to do that.
Yeah, why not?
Well, because they want to control the narrative, I think, if you ask me. And so what happened was that Lauren Boebert, though, took a picture of Clinton testifying, which then brought the testimony to a stop yesterday. And because she then shared that with a blogger who then posted the photo. So then Hillary Clinton was like, then bring the cameras in. If you're going to do this, let's put it all out on the record.
Yep.
So they stopped for a while. When she came out afterwards, Hillary Clinton said that, seeing that happen then leads you to believe, well, if they're not going to follow those rules and what we agreed upon, what are they going to follow that they agree upon? But she continued her testimony, answered all that she could. She said as honestly as she could, and that as she has said many times before, and now it's on the record many more times, she did not know Jeffrey Epstein. Some are concerned. It's interesting. The woman that they bring before the committee is the one they go after about her knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein when she's not even mentioned in the files.
Yes.
The whole thing is an absolute mess. It makes my blood boil that at the end of the day, there were a lot of women that were taken advantage of. There were so many power dynamics at play. And here we are talking about Hillary Clinton. And as you mentioned, she was never mentioned in the Epstein files.
Yeah.
Are the women going to testify, the victims?
I don't believe so.
Well, I mean, doesn't that seem like the ideal witness?
They already have, I think,
right. They have
yeah,
testimony on record that's in, but it's so much of that has been redacted for the safety of the victims. And the victims shouldn't be, they know what the victims claim. That's why this whole thing is happening. So it's more to find out. But the interesting thing is that the victims have, I believe, under whatever they call it, keeping it blocked. They have named names, but they don't want to do it publicly because of retaliation. And
I guess
Congress should be doing.
The point I'm getting at is if you start bringing all these people in to testify, then it seems like the victims would want to say, wait a minute, he said he knew nothing and did nothing, and I'm here to tell you he knew a lot and he did a lot. If that's the case.
And they've done that before. I think that's essentially why former Prince Andrew was arrested, was because of record testimony from Virginia Giuffre, who basically said multiple times on record in different cases that they had interactions, inappropriate interactions together. And, as somebody who read her book, Nobody's Girl, it was devastating to read. She actually committed suicide 3 months before the book was released. And we're coming up on a year from that. And it is devastating.
713-440-8870. We're curious. What do you think? Have you been following these testimonies? What's your reaction to it all? Barbara is on the line from Magnolia. Barbara, what's on your mind?
Well, I trust Hillary Clinton. I believe that she is honest and straightforward, and I believe that if whatever she testified to, that she would tell the truth. I also am happy that she and Bill Clinton agreed to testify, even if they didn't get to do it openly and live in person like they wanted to, but had to do it behind closed doors, because that establishes the precedent that presidents can be made to testify to this, and opens up or improves the possibility that President Trump will be able to, or that we will be able to force President Trump to testify.
Right. Yep. Thank you very much for that comment. I want to go back over, we were talking about a former president testifying also in that opening statement that Bill Clinton released. He said, quote, "As someone who grew up in a home with domestic abuse, not only would I not have flown on his plane if I had any inkling of what he was doing, I would have turned him in myself and led the call for justice for his crimes, not sweetheart deals." That is also a quote from Clinton. It'll be interesting to see when this transcript comes out, too, what they're going to ask him about. The Hillary Clinton, they went off, they asked her about UFOs, they asked her about Pizzagate, which had been proven to be a made-up internet story years ago. It becomes ridiculous, And to your point, I think, or one of you just said, why not let investigators investigate instead of Congress investigating?
Yeah, we got a text. Jen in Clear Lake says every time Republicans are in trouble, they try to go after Hillary.
Yeah.
Republicans have investigated her like 20 times. There's nothing there. Lutnick's wife spent more time with Epstein than Hillary.
Yep.
And again, 713-440-8870. Let's go to Steve from Pasadena. Steve, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hi. Enjoy y'all's show very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is the person that voted for Bill Clinton, I don't trust either one of them, because I remember Hillary, the smashed cell phones, the 32,000 deleted emails, and the Russian collusion that was proven later to be false. So I don't trust a word she says, although I think she's right. This should be in public and let investigators investigate, but I don't trust the things she says. That's my comment.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think Steve speaks. A lot of people feel that way. But I think also you hit a point, which is what I was kind of hoping is where we were at, where you no longer care because you have been torn down so much in public that you're just like, this is the truth. I'm not going to protect anyone. I'm just going to say what I know. And a lot of people believe that's what Bill Clinton's motivation is in going forward and why they wanted cameras, because he could say, at the time I didn't know any of this, but what I have found out, what I had heard was, and just lay it all out there. Yeah. I don't know if that's happening right now because we are in our own little bubble being on air right now.
I do think that there is something to that. If you have been around somebody, which I think everybody at some point in their life has hung out with somebody, and they thought maybe this person isn't the most wholesome, right? And you go out and there's layers of groups and friends and friendships, and I am not in any way, shape, or form excusing anybody here. However, I am saying that there are layers to relationships, and after the fact, a couple years down the road, you're like, oh, they were doing that?
Yeah. And also, to jump on what you're saying there, too, the whole fact that is, if Bill Clinton did something wrong, go after him, too.
1,000%.
I'm in no way saying the Clintons are holier than thou and shouldn't be held to the same thing.
This, to me,
Everyone
is beyond politics.
Yes.
This, to me, is about justice for young women that were taken advantage of, children that were taken advantage of, power plays that were taken advantage of. So this, to me, is not I could care less where and who and what your last name and what you've done. This is about justice and the lack thereof.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a couple more calls. Claudio is on the line from North Houston. Claudio, welcome to Hello Houston.
Good afternoon. I just had a question. with the upcoming midterms and the mishandling of the Epstein files disclosure, such as the NPR report that recently came out, do you think that the administration would look at an scapegoat to mitigate the damage to the upcoming midterms?
I think that is a big concern a lot of people have. I do want to go back, and thank you for that comment. I do want to mention the NPR report that I do believe he is referencing is the fact that there was testimony found within all of the Epstein drop about Bill Clinton, or about Donald Trump having, I don't even want to say the words, having abused a young woman. And all of the testimony and the corroborating documentation, 50 pages of it, seems to have been pulled from the file. It was not available. And then they went and they cross-referenced it, and it was material that led to Ghislaine Maxwell being convicted. So it was in the testimony of her closed hearing, and it's all been pulled from there too. And so NPR first reported it, and then the New York Times substantiated it. So there seems that there's a big chunk of this that's missing when it comes to referring directly to the president.
Tapes.
Yeah, the 17 minutes that are missing. Yeah.
Well, one last call here. Kyle from Spring. Welcome to Hello Houston, Kyle.
Hi, thanks for having me. I wanted to say that I agree with Celeste that these proceedings should be first and foremost about justice. And to the extent that they are, they've fallen tragically short, in my opinion. But as Republicans seem to be using this as a political stunt, it seems that they're rather out of touch with the left in that they seem to have the impression that people on the left care one way or the other about the Clintons as people who may be harmed in the Epstein files, given, among other things, that they're not even active in the political world to any appreciable extent anymore.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you. Thank you for those comments, Kyle. It's funny, I mean, there's some belief, a lot of people not surprised to see Bill Clinton popping up in there. We have an image of Bill Clinton as kind of this, like, a little more frat boy grown up. But when does that cross the line? And was he involved in any behavior that did cross the line? And hopefully we'll understand that too. But I guarantee, I shouldn't say that. I believe that if there was a smoking gun on Bill Clinton in these files, that would not have been redacted. That the current administration would have made sure that came out. Yeah. I get that feeling. But
and isn't it funny, just like Watergate, it all comes down to what did you know and when did you know it?
Yep. And so it'll be interesting to see all of this unfold over the weekend. We should get both testimonies released of both Clintons, and then we see where this goes from there. But,
okay. Yep. Where are we going from here?
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll speak with the Housing Alliance HTX CEO, Jamie Bryant. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
The show Heated Rivalry.
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're watching right now. So take the next step and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference. And what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. So join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
Ukraine. A new Oscar-nominated film tells the story of an American journalist shot and killed by Russian troops.
It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, to keep documenting the murder of my brother, but I knew without a doubt that's absolutely what Brent would have wanted me to do.
Don't miss this week's On the Media from WNYC.
On the Media tomorrow at 5 p.m. on News 88.7.
Europeans have long admired the United States.
We had a love affair with America. It was a big brother, it was the ally.
But that relationship is being challenged.
It's very, very confusing and very unsettling.
Get a European view on the state of the U.S., plus a Stonecutter's tour of Europe.
There's something about that space that just vibrates within you.
On the next Travel with Rick Steves.
Travel with Rick Steves, Saturday at 6 p.m. on News 88.7.
Support comes from Visit Galveston, presenting the Zopé Italian Family Circus, a one-ring show that includes acrobatics, equestrian stunts, clowns, and storytelling. March 6th through 30th. Tickets at visitgalveston.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Oh, you want a new start, you change your name, right? Housing Alliance HTX CEO Jamie Bryant marked this one-year anniversary as the organization's leader this week. Formerly known as the Houston Housing Authority, the group voted to rebrand earlier this year. So to tell us more about the name change and what he has planned for the second year as CEO and beyond, we welcome Jamie Bryant. We're glad you are here in the studio at Hello Houston. You've had quite a challenge.
It's been a year.
Yeah, it has been a year.
Yes.
What's been the most difficult?
Coming into this job, I knew I was walking into a challenge, right? I mean, I wouldn't be here if not. There were obviously issues that predated me. And so, from things we had to clean up with HUD, from local issues to just figuring out what we had to do with the team. And so I feel like this first year, there's been a lot going on in the background a lot of people haven't seen. It's kind of the foundational work. I was a real estate developer for 25 years, so a lot of times people see a building going up and they're like, wow, that went up so quickly, and they don't realize there was 3 years of kind of mucking around in the dirt before then to actually get it to that point. And so that's what we've been doing this last year. We've been cleaning up a lot of stuff. We've been kind of resetting the foundation so we can really move forward and do a lot of good stuff this year and going forward.
And that's what I was going to ask you, Jamie. So you've been in this role a year. What lessons were learned? And so now moving forward, what are you all going to be focusing on?
Yeah, so coming into it, I mean, there was a lot of talk and pressure around a couple of key points for the Housing Authority that y'all were probably aware of because they were in the news a lot. Not just my predecessor and his issues, but things like the project appointed by you banded 800 Middle or the PFCs and the tax exemptions. And so, a lot of those things I knew I was going to have to tackle and clean up and figure out. Understanding, though, the rest of the agency and understanding that this agency serves a little over 100,000 Houstonians, 70% of which are below the poverty line. Half of them are seniors and disabled residents. And so that, there was also a piece missing there where there was a lot of things going on there where it was very programmatic, box checking, and really trying to reset everybody's vision and set the culture that we need to be an organization about people, right? And that we are here to serve people. Yes, real estate's in the name. Housing is what we do, but ultimately we're here to serve people. And that's got to be the key thing. And so I have to have team members and staff and support that's the thing they care about most, right? We can figure out the rest, we can work on the rest, but serving people and serving their needs is the very first thing about our mission.
Take me in a little bit into the details so people understand exactly what your organization does, how it impacts their lives.
So housing authorities, they were formed by an act of Congress in 1937. The state of Texas elected to allow some to be formed in the state here, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, and others, in 1938. So we just had our 88th anniversary. And, 95% of what we do is funded through Congress and congressional appropriations. So one of the questions you asked about what I didn't know, going through a 45-day government shutdown last year was an interesting thing.
Right.
When we work heavily through Congress, we administer about 20,000 vouchers to families, so that equates to about 60,000 residents in Houston. And the voucher program is there to help subsidize and bridge the gap between the market rents and what these families can afford. And we generally look at that affordability around 30% of their take-home income. And so you might have somebody, an elderly person who is on Social Security that only brings in $1,000 a month. Well, they can only afford about $300 a month towards rent. There's nothing in Houston you can rent that's safe and healthy for $300 a month. And so the voucher program helps to bridge that gap. And then on the other side of it, we own and manage and control the public housing stock in the city of Houston to the tune of about 5,000 units as well. It works in a similar manner, except for the voucher program. We call it the Choice Voucher Program. It used to be called Section 8. That was just the title in the legislation. But it's called the Choice Voucher because a voucher allows somebody to actually move. They can take that voucher, go somewhere else in the city as long as a landlord accepts it and it passes an inspection. The public housing, you don't have that option. you live there until you decide to move out, but you don't get to take the subsidy with you. It stays there. And so, but a lot of the public housing stock, and this was one of the things I realized coming in, is very old. It's 70, 80 years old. It wasn't built to today's standards, and we have people living in substandard conditions that we're now, putting plans in place on how we're going to address. Because again, it's about people, right? And when I walk into a unit and I see a unit that's, the air conditioning doesn't work well, it's got a leaky pipe, maybe there's been mold and mildew built up over time. I mean, some of these places up until 5 years ago never had air conditioning.
But the number you gave too of both vouchers and residents that you control, I don't know. I'm coming to this cold, but it seems a very small number for the size of population and the area that needs to be served. Am I wrong on that, or is that one of your big challenges?
I mean, it is a challenge, obviously, because we are capped by the funding we receive from the federal government. And so, are there more people that need to be served? It's probably 4 times that amount, right? That could use our services. And so, one of the frustrations people have with us is that we have all these programs, but we are full. Our programs are capped and are capped by the funding from Congress. And unfortunately, right now, more funding out of Congress this last year, we've been fighting just to keep our funding at par. Right, so that we don't have to cut programs. Fortunately, our appropriations bill and our friends on Capitol Hill did us, a real solid this year, and 3 weeks ago in the appropriations bill, kept our voucher funding at par with a little increase for cost of living from last year, when the president's budget actually 6 months ago had proposed a 40% cut.
What's your relationship with landlords?
So we have about 5,000 landlords we work with throughout the city who accept vouchers. In the state of Texas, it's not a legal requirement to accept a voucher holder. I mean, there are properties that have to. So if you take federal money or you're a tax credit property or something like that, you have a legal requirement to. But your run-of-the-mill market landlord has no legal obligation to take a voucher. So we have to have a good relationship with our landlords, make sure they understand the process. And that's something we're working on right now, because as a former landlord and real estate developer, I can speak their language to say, look, what's one of the frustrations you have? Well, a tenant comes to us, they have a voucher, we want to bring them in, but it's instead of it being a 15-day process like it is with if any one of you were to go rent an apartment, it becomes a 45, 60-day process. And now that apartment sits there, I'm not collecting rent on it, et cetera. And so we're working to try and, make our processes more efficient, make sure our landlords understand, hey, for example, we have to send an inspector to inspect the apartment. HUD does not allow us to move somebody into an apartment if it doesn't meet certain requirements. You can move in wherever you want to as a private citizen. So our inspection process sometimes can take 30, 45 days. We're trying to get that down to 15 so that our landlords are more willing to work with us with our voucher holders.
Well, I was going to ask you, are there any other incentives for landlords to want to work with you?
Yeah, so we do have some incentive. We have some grant programs and things like that allow us to work with landlords, work with them on things like security deposits and backstopping damages and things of that. But we're looking into more of those just to let them know that, ultimately we want to be their partner and they have to be a part of our success. And actually the voucher program is one of the best ways to house folks because it doesn't create a big layer of federal oversight and bureaucracy, right? These are market apartments. They were built by the private market, private debt, private investors, et cetera. And ultimately all we are doing is addressing the rent gap. Whereas anytime I try to go build something as a government agency, just go add 20, 30% to it, right? I mean, and so the voucher program actually works really well and it's really efficient, but we're trying to make it more efficient for both our residents and the landlords.
And, Jamie, I have to ask, when looking at Houston families and individuals in affordable housing, what does that look like here in Houston? Can you talk to us a little bit about numbers? And you talked about, as well as, I've always, whenever I think about, I want to call it the Houston Housing Authority, but the Housing Alliance HTX, I hear wait list.
Yeah.
And I hear a lot of bloat and bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Talk to us about how many residents there are in and how y'all are making it more efficient for residents.
Yeah, so the residents, like I said, we plus or minus 20,000 vouchers, another 5,000 units of residential, and so that is around 70,000 Houstonians in total, because those are families, right, at the end of the day. So average family size could be 3 to 4. And so we're serving about 75,000 residents through that program. Right now, the attrition out of the program is very little, meaning, it's the natural thing. Somebody passes away. Somebody might move out of the market. But otherwise, we have very little attrition out of the program, which, and unless Congress gives us more money, it means we are not able to open up our wait list to bring new people in. So we're looking at how do we solve that? Like, I can't be naive and think Congress is just going to send us a bunch more money, right? So one of the things we're focusing on going forward is our self-sufficiency programs, job training programs, and things of that nature, so that we can lean in more with our residents, our able-bodied residents. I mean, of course, 50% of our population that we serve is disabled or elderly, but with the other half of our population, working with them on job training, self-sufficiency, home ownership counseling, all the things that might help them along their journey, everything from homelessness to home ownership, right? So that maybe we can create some room in the system by exiting people out of it. I mean, one of the sad things I heard one of my first weeks on the job was a lady who lived at one of our public housing developments, and one of the very first ones that was ever done here in Houston, telling me that her grandmother grew up there. Her mom grew up there. She grew up there. She's now raising her kids there. So we're talking about 4 generations in poverty in the same public housing complex. And while we may not be able to solve it for that mother, maybe we can put things in place to solve it for her kids so that they're the ones who break the cycle. So we're also working on youth build grants and youth training and things like that to help our teens.
The next generation.
Correct. Where can we break that cycle, and so that we can create capacity in the system by exiting people out of it in a good way.
Yeah.
What do you want the name change to signify to those who use your services?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, language matters, right? And language changes over time. And in our world, the 2 examples that always come up are the word projects and Section 8 vouchers, right? Neither one of those words is a bad word in itself, right? But it just had a negative connotation around it because of what people envisioned, the old housing projects. Well, a project's a project. I mean, whatever that means, but they stopped calling it that because it had this negative connotation. They used a different word for Section 8. And so authority has had this same issue in the populations we serve. While it is a legal term, the Port Authority, the Toll Road Authority, the Sports Authority. In our world, the word authority, those folks are not dealing with people's lives, right? They're dealing with complexes and facilities and roads and things like that. In our world, the word authority has taken on this very negative connotation as the government, big brother, we know best, do what you're told, right? And so, and I've talked to so many residents and members that just really did not like that word and despised it. So first and foremost was a shift from that, right, to get away from this language of authority. And so we started thinking about what is it we're really here to do. We are here to walk alongside somebody in their journey, right? No matter what that is. They might be 2 months away from finishing up college. They might be somebody who just got off the streets and is homeless. They might be a senior. Everybody's journey is a little different, but we're here to partner with you, right? And what you might need out of this may just be housing. Maybe you need counseling. Maybe you need other, home ownership counseling. Maybe you need other things from us. And, and so I view the equality equation, right, is not about everybody gets the same thing, right? But we're coming in to try and meet people's needs. And so we talked about words like partnership and collaboration and things like that, and settled on the word alliance. Also, it allows us to talk about it in other ways. So yes, Housing Alliance HTX is what we landed on, but if you go to our website, we have a lot of different plays on the word alliance. So it's not just Alliance for Housing, it's Alliance for Hope, Alliance for Human Dignity, Alliance for Healthy Living, Alliance for Houston, right? And so that we can start to, let people know that we're not just there to put roofs over people's heads, right? We're there to walk alongside them in their journey as a partner, and whatever that might be. Housing obviously is a big part of it, but there's a lot of other things we need to do to support our residents here in Houston.
And how does someone get involved with this? Because you said, first of all, there's not a lot of openings.
Yeah.
So when there is an opening or two, how does someone know to even get there?
Yeah, so we're one thing we're doing, and we're trying to do a better job of obviously getting out here and speaking with folks like yourselves, getting out in the media. We actually had a wait list open up today on a project that has 95 units. We put out publications about it. I mentioned it in our board meeting on Tuesday. There's information on our website, so Alliance HTX.org. We post things. And generally, like for this one, for example, we had a specific set of vouchers tied to some brand new units in the second ward, and that wait list opened up at 10 a.m. this morning.
And that's 95 units?
Correct. Yeah, and so those things we're putting out in the public. We had a responsibility to actually put a notice out 30 days ago, and so we've been promoting it the last 30 days, to let people know. But we will probably have 2,000-3,000 people sign up for that wait list by the end of the day today. Think about Taylor Swift concert tickets. That's what's going on there, and that's how big the demand is versus what we can supply.
Really quickly, and are you allowed to raise money independently than what you're given through the government? Can you do fundraising and kind of increase your budget that way?
We can, and we do have a nonprofit in the fundraising. And while we haven't done a lot of it, the fundraising we have done from that standpoint, we have used to lean into more of our social programs, scholarships for for kids and students coming out of public housing, things of that nature. Not specifically, but then we've had nonprofits who bring along their own sources of funds who come in and have worked with us on new housing opportunities that they support, depending on what it is. A lot of times that might gear more towards permanent supportive housing, things that help homelessness and very specific needs versus the broader, because a lot of those organizations do. So yeah, we absolutely can. There are some rules around how we mix and mingle funds with things like federal funds, but we definitely need more of the philanthropic community to lean in here.
And so how do you decide who gets to come to the 95 units?
So very much, again, I actually went through it with my team this week because as much as I know we do it, I didn't understand the back end system, and it very much is. It is very computerized that, folks, we've been telling folks, go on, set up your account with us, and then at 10 a.m. you hit refresh, the system opens up, you fill out an application, and the system starts to mark the applications as they're submitted, timestamped.
But Jamie, that's assuming most people have a computer.
Yes.
So what about people that don't maybe have access to computers or electronics or a phone that might need this type of resource?
Yeah. So I mean, they can come to our office at 2640 Fountain View. They can come to some of our properties and use the management offices there. They can call in, to our head office as well.
Is it first come, first serve?
So it is first come, first serve as far as your place on the list when it opens up. So again, just depends on who got in at 10 a.m. this morning, filled out their application, where that got timestamped. But then it has to be vetted. There are requirements to be in the program. There are people who will, we still run criminal background checks and other things like that. There's certain people that can't be on federal subsidy. You have to be a citizen of the United States, for example, to receive federal subsidy. And so there's things like that start to weed out the list. And so it's not necessarily the first 95 people that sign up are going to get it. We might have to go through 300 or 400 to find 95 qualified people. But the unfortunate thing, so you brought the wait list up before, is this agency in the past has opened up wait lists and let them grow to inflated amounts for reasons I never understood, because to me it gives a false sense of hope, right? To say, let's open up the wait list and let 20,000 people get on it. Well, we won't pull 20,000 people off the wait list in the next 10 years. So why are we giving people this false sense of hope? And so one of the things we did last year is we cleaned it up. We asked people to, resubmit, and the wait list actually went down to about 2,000 people who were, some people who'd been on the wait list for the last 10 years died, moved, found a place to live. Lots of different things. So, there's little things like that the agency had done in the past that I'm not faulting them necessarily, but I just feel like there's a better way forward to make sure that people have hope. Now, one of the other issues, as you said, most of our stuff is closed. One of the things I would love to do, and we're going to try and work with the broader Houston community, is we don't control all the affordable housing stock in the city of Houston. There's a lot of tax credit developers and folks who've worked with the county. There's it's not just the housing authority, is to be able to build a better data system, a better with technology today that can show real-time availability. Because back to the point about landlords, for example, somebody has a voucher, they need to go find a unit that accepts it. Well, that can be an arduous process where they spend weeks going and visiting properties and touring and seeing, versus us being able to help kind of bring a collective system together that has real-time data at least updated every week. I mean, think of an Expedia or something like that, right? Where is there a seat on the plane or not, right? At the end of the day, so that we can help the frustration level of our residents from that standpoint as well. And there's other properties, for example, that, again, there's tax credit properties out there, don't have anything to do with us. They are subsidized through the low-income tax credit program, which is administered by the state, that have units that are set at rents for people who make 30% of the adjusted median income, 50%, 60%.
To find more information, where can folks go?
So first off, come to our website, alliancehtx.org, and we have resources on there. And again, we're trying to expand that as we move forward.
Great. Jamie Bryant is the CEO of Housing Alliance HTX. Jamie, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Coming up, we're going to discuss our last-minute plans. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
We know you value Houston Public.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross-country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
88.7. Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, people in Iran contemplate a war that could be catastrophic.
Maybe we will transition to a democracy, or maybe we won't. Maybe things will get even worse. But we're not in a situation to worry about this because we are way beyond the no turning back points.
The U.S. and Iran and the prospect of war. Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour.
The New Yorker Radio Hour, Sunday at 9 a.m. on News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro, introducing the Ride Metro Fare Card. The Ride Metro Fare system replaces the Metro Q Fare Card for bus and rail fares. Details at ridemetro.org/fare system. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Hildebrand, MBA at UT Austin's McComb School of Business, offering the weekend MBA at Houston. Campus visit February 28th. Details at texasmbaevents.com. Make it here.
And now back to Hello Houston. To share your thoughts on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
And we are back again.
We are talking about things we're doing.
That's right. We've reached the end of the week here on Hello Houston, and with the weekend upon us, we have some last-minute plans for you, our faithful listeners. Frank, Ernie, do y'all have any weekend plans?
I do.
What do you have?
I'm emceeing the AOS school, Annunciation Orthodox School.
You're back in with my Greeks again.
I am. I don't know why they asked me, the Presbyterian. But we're going to go to the Revere, which is sort of it's really become more popular the last couple of years as a gala space. So we're going to go to that. And Johnny Bravo will be there, so we're going to raise some money for the AOS students.
Love it. What about you, Ernie?
We're going to try to go eat some barbecue tonight.
Oh, and eat barbecue tonight.
Because the rodeo's going on. Yeah. Barbecue Cook-Off has begun. It's always the launch of rodeo season here. And tomorrow I get to go out there and I get to judge. They have what do they call it? The world's largest barbecue cook-off but there's a competition, and people try and win prizes and get there. And so over the years, I've moved up. Now I get to judge brisket, and they are extremely specific in how you do it, and no talking, no photos, the way we interact with each other, and they watch our scores. So if you've been a judge for a couple of years and your score doesn't match with other people at your table in independence and how you decide, you can get moved off the list. So a lot of pressure, but I get to do that tomorrow. Also, though, NPR.
How long does that take, by the way?
About 45 minutes. We don't do that many samples, and there's tons of judges that move through the day. And so there's a massive earlier round, and then it narrows down to chicken, ribs, brisket. I think there's also sausage. And then they have multiple rounds of that, and then they get to the final rounds, and it's a lot. They take a lot of pride in doing it. But also Tom Bowman, who is with NPR, international Pentagon reporter. Also, he's here in town, and we're going to do a fireside chat tomorrow morning with him. Great. So I've got to go from that to barbecue. I don't know how you dress for a day like that. Celeste, what are you doing?
I'm going to be at a kids basketball game for 5-year-olds tomorrow morning, and then I'll be at
just for fun, or do you have a 5-year-old playing?
A fourth grade volleyball game afterwards. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hang out with my family, and I'm going to enjoy the weekend.
You're earning your mama stripes.
Absolutely.
And then we'll be in March.
When we come back. We'll be in March. Yep. But on Saturday, the Downtown Rodeo Parade, U.S. Coast Guard Petty Officer Scott Ruskin will serve as the Grand Marshal of the 2026 Downtown Rodeo Parade. He is a rescue swimmer whose life-saving actions during the July 4th flash floods in the Texas Hill Country earned national recognition, saving 165 children from the raging waters.
Wow.
Did you guys see? He actually received a medal on the State of the Union address.
Yeah, Medal of Honor.
Amazing. Absolutely incredible story. The parade will begin at 10 a.m. Arrive early to secure a viewing spot along the parade's route. Yeah. So, I mean, it's rodeo. It's rodeo time, baby.
And then it does say here, World's Championship Barbecue Contest. That was the title I was looking for earlier. And that's going to happen. It's going on right now. It started yesterday, I guess, and it goes through tomorrow. And even though there are lots of private tents and private parties, so when you go there, you're not going into all of the events. You got to get ticketed from different organizations. But in general, they have increased the activity, and what you can do is you come there as just a spectator. You get your ticket to get in. You get a barbecue plate. There's live entertainment. There's the carnival right there. There's a lot going on. So even if you're not going to a private party, it is an event to be seen and to be enjoyed.
And then
and the weather's perfect for it. So.
Yeah, tell us about if you're outside.
It's going to be right there in this around 70, 72 degrees.
To
clear
have
skies.
A little barbecue al fresco.
Little wafting through the air.
Ooh, I love that.
But I always say, wear clothes you don't mind if they get a smell on them, because it takes a while to get that barbecue out of your clothes again.
You can see the skyline up. They're absolutely beautiful.
And I'll give you one more key when it comes to barbecue. Go early if you don't like the crowds. It opens at 9 a.m. and you can wander around and enjoy the day. But as it gets later, my Lord, it gets
a popular event.
Yeah.
Yes. And on Sunday, if you want to head inside, the Museum of Fine Arts Houston presents Winter Festival Year of the Horse. Yay. Guests will be able to celebrate the Year of the Horse at this family-friendly winter festival. There will be art-making activities with family and friends, music, and dance performances, and food representing a variety of Asian cuisine. Sounds delicious. Admission is free to both the festival activities and the Museum of Fine Arts Houston permanent collections. The event will be from 1 to 5 p.m. Highly recommend. We have one of the most, I think, beautiful museums there is.
But it's just funny when you call it a winter festival and we're looking at the sunny day and people it's so funny how we live here and how the seasons, it is winter still, folks.
And Frank keeps saying it's going to be beautiful this weekend. So if we're going to take Frank's advice, we're going to go to a walk in the woods. This is a free, brisk 3 to 4 mile hike through Memorial Park, one of Houston's best kept outdoor secrets. This will be a get those steps in and meet fun people moment as you embark on this Houston adventure. Expect natural terrain such as dirt trails and rolling hills participants will need to bring. Don't forget to pack your trail shoes, water, bug spray, sunscreen, and layers for the weather. You can also bring your dog if you want to take your pup out for a walk. This is a great one. And this is an adult-only hike, so leave the kids at home. Arrive 8:45 at the Memorial Park and Picnic Lane parking lot.
Over on YouTube, my British computer guy says, I love this one, spending some quality time with Mrs. British computer guy. They're going to have a little bourbon. He's going to play some games online with friends and have a fabulous weekend.
Yeah. Well, I definitely plan to have some barbecue this weekend.
Oh, good.
That's on my, and all weekend long, the Houston Ballet Sylvia at the Wortham Center. Stanton Welch's Sylvia blends Greek mythology into a powerful story of love where 3 fierce women drive the story, including Sylvia, the fearless huntress, Artemis, the commanding goddess, and Psyche, the compassionate mortal. There you go. Welch's multi-layered narrative dives between mythical and human realms.
Greek myths on one side of me, a Greek god over at the Annunciation School doing their gala on the other side. I am surrounded by Greekness today.
But I hate to break it to you.
What?
We've run out of time. That brings us to the end of our week for Hello Houston. We want to thank you for watching, calling, texting, and listening. We'll be back on Monday with more conversations. We'll also be joined by Harris County Attorney Jonathan Founbaum. In the meantime, you can catch the best of Hello Houston Saturdays at 1 p.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. right here on News 88.7. Have a great weekend, Houston.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altai, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.